Hey friends, it's Peggy Hall back with you from the healthyamerican.org. I'm streaming live and today is Friday, August 25th, 2023. I'm doing my continual coverage of the disaster in LAHAINA, and I've got what I think is good news about the children of LAHAINA. Let me start by saying I've been covering this since the day it broke out. And so many of you have been leaving comments, watching other videos, going to other websites, and you have come to me in great distress, concerned about the children. Where are the children? Why aren't they accounted for? They were sent home from school, on that day because the winds were high. And then there are other directions that some of you are going in terms of what possibly could have happened. This is called catastrophizing, and there already is a catastrophe. There is a known catastrophe, one that is visible, that we can see, that at least what we're seeing with those that are on the ground and sending in the footage. There is a lot, of course, that we don't know, but here's what I want you to know and the questions that I want you to ask. Let me share with this. Number one, yes, there were high winds that morning of August 8th, and there were some fires that broke out around the island, not just in LAHAINA. And in LAHAINA, those fires were extinguished, according to eyewitnesses, and the firefighters were pulled off the scene. The deadly fire that broke out later was not until the afternoon. There are conflicting reports, but it was late in the afternoon, and then the footage that we saw was at night. So think about this. If the children were sent home from school, and let's assume in the worst case scenario, these are elementary age children or maybe even 5 years old. So number one, how did the children get home? Did the parents come pick them up? Did the 5-year-old go home and walk home on his own? Was there a school bus that dropped the children off after they were at school? Or was school simply canceled and the children were already home? That may be one of the scenarios. But if the children were home during the day, that's not when the deadly fire occurred. There have been reports by some that I, again, believe are feeding the fear. And I always try to get you out of the spin cycle, not put you in the spin cycle with more dread and fear and catastrophe. So I like to think through this logically and ask questions. So if the children were home, how do you know they were home alone? That's what the news reports are saying. That's what some on the blogs and these YouTube channels are saying. What is the evidence that there was no one else at home? How do you know that one parent wasn't at home? How do you know that the child didn't go with the parent or the parents to work that day? How do you know that those parents weren't working at home remotely, like so many of us have been doing over the last few years? How do you know that that parent didn't own a jewelry store or a chocolate shop or a restaurant or a plumbing company? And maybe the child accompanied that parent to work. We don't know that that's not the case. How do you know that there wasn't extended family at home? For example, an auntie or uncle or the grandparents, which is often the case in traditional families. Perhaps there was even more than one family living together in that household. So I don't have the answers to these questions, but I do have the questions. And when I start to think about these questions, it puts me in mind to say that this is fear mongering to plant images in people's minds as if 5 and 8-year-olds were home alone during the deadly part of the fire. From the evidence that I've collected, through the investigations that I've done and the videos that I've seen, that isn't the case. So I want to at least put that on the table so that you can consider it and not just go along with the catastrophizing, which is adding on additional pain and grief and suffering to the already existing horrific conditions that were inflicted upon the unsuspecting population of LAHAINA. Further, if the fire started to break out, and let's say that a parent was working at a hotel and they had an afternoon shift or an evening shift and the child was home alone, don't you think, wouldn't you have done that? At the first sign of fire or smoke, you would have left your place of business. You would have immediately rushed home to get your children or your animals. That's what I would have done. I would not have waited for any kind of emergency siren. And I'm not absolving anyone from the blame. That should have happened. And I would not have waited for a text message on my phone. in a small community like Lahaina, which you may not be familiar with, or maybe you are, I'm sure that the word spread quickly that something was happening. And in an emergency, you leave your job, you go and take care of your loved ones, or you call someone. I've spoken about this before in tight-knit communities like Lahaina, and it's not 100%, but the tendency is that you have neighbors who look out for each other. It's a tight-knit community. We're not talking about some, metropolis where you don't know your neighbors. So in these instances, it gives me hope that the initial reports that have been repeated over and over and over again, I believe, for clicks and views and fear-mongering, I'm not falling for that. I want more information, and I'm asking these questions. So the next one that I have here is on the list of missing persons, which now has reduced more than half. They have something like 300 names or more on a list. That still has not been validated. These lists were compiled by the police, by the FBI, by other agencies, FEMA and others, where people were reporting that they had a loved one missing. Now, it's likely that that loved one, let me not say it's likely, it's possible that a loved one was found, and in the joyous reunion and all of the shock and grief that is going on, the family didn't think to call back the FEMA representative and tell them, oh, you can take my loved one off the list. So it's possible that some names on this list remain, even though those loved ones have been found. And there is no evidence that anyone on that list is a child. There is no age associated with the name. So it's unknown if these are children or not in terms of what happened in this disaster. And the third thing, and for me, the most compelling reason why I have good news about the children of Lahaina is because in all of the news footage that I've reviewed, and I'm doing it hours and hours a day. I mean, every waking moment is spent reviewing the footage from all different types of news agencies, those that are on the ground, combing through information. And I have yet to see any parent come forward saying, where's my child? I can't find my child. Have you seen that? Have you seen any interviews with people on the ground that are parents saying, I can't find my child? If that was me, and even if it was my dog or my cat, I would be trying to get on the news saying, here's my loved one, please help me. I'm overwhelmed. This is the last place I saw them. This was what time I left home. This is the last time that I knew they were there. Have you seen any of those? If you have, I apologize because, I don't apologize, but if you have, please send that to me and I will reclaim these words that I'm speaking. But I have never seen a parent going on the news saying, my child is missing. Now, there, as far as I can see, reports of 2 children that were victims of the fire. One was 14 and one was 7. I can't even verify this. I do not want to disrespect anyone who lost a loved one in the fire at all. My heart and my prayers are with all those who are suffering. I've been in disasters. I was days after the Hurricane Katrina going there to try to rescue animals. So I have seen firsthand, not a fire, but a different kind of disaster. And I was there rolling up my sleeves, pulling these animals out of the homes. So my heart is full of compassion for those who have lost a loved one. Having said that, in disasters, it can happen that there are those unscrupulous individuals that are trying to play on the heartstrings of you and me, and setting up GoFundMes for victims that don't exist. I'm not claiming that the 2 individuals that were 7 and 14, I'm not claiming that that's the case, but I do want you to look at that footage. And I do want you to put on your critical thinking skills. And what I do is I ask myself, what kind of images are coming forward? All right, if I had a lost animal, I would have a dozen high quality photos that I could share with you so that you would see this animal from different angles and different sizes and the color and all of that. Yet these images that are presented to us often in disasters, think about Shady Nook. It's like one image that is trotted out again and again and again. And in this day and age of social media, there's no footprint for any of these individuals. All right, another thing that comes to mind is I'm not hearing from any of the school authorities saying, oh, these are the children that haven't returned. We know that this dozen of children aren't showing back up or coming online for the remote learning. So I'm not getting any evidence of the lost children. There are those in my audience that will say, well, Peggy, there is something else nefarious afoot. And I personally am not going to be presenting information unless I have evidence of anything else. I do not have evidence of the Marines. Many of you are asking me about that, of the Marines going in on the ground and doing things. No, I have zero evidence of that. So I am not here to put you in the spin cycle. I am here to actually talk you down off the cliff, to help you think more critically about the information that you're presented with in the news so that you can be more grounded and not catastrophize. And the reason why is so many of you are telling me that you can't sleep at night, that you're sobbing 24/7. And I'm grateful that you have a compassionate heart, but where is your grief placed? Is it placed on some news headline that is there to grab clicks and links and or likes or whatever? Or is that based on evidence? This is probably not going to be a popular video because I'm not feeding the fear mongering and I'm not catastrophizing over what already is an unbelievable catastrophe. So that's what I'm here for, to think clearly, to be sober-minded, and to help you think more critically about the information that you're being presented with. Now, stick with me because I'm about to do a second video all about critical thinking and about this call from the FBI for the survivors to give their DNA to the FBI. Friends, I want you to think clearly about this. I'm going to bring all of this information to you in an upcoming video. And I, again, am going to bring you evidence for my position. If you have an opinion, if you have drawn a conclusion, I want to see your evidence. I want to see the information. I want to see proof if you have it. And that's what I strive to do on this channel. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing this video. Thank you when you are on other YouTube channels for reminding people to come over and check out my coverage, which has been ongoing since day one. I'm not just showing other people's images. I'm doing analysis of the players. I'm helping you understand the nefarious reasons behind this agenda, as I call it, which is all tied in with the United Nations, with their Sustainable Development Goals, as the governor himself has stated. I was the first person, to my knowledge, that broke that news and that also captured his saying, we will build back better. This is where I am using my critical thinking skills, analyzing the footage and bringing this information out, just like I did. We did it live together when we saw what were you calling him? Joe Blow? Is that his nickname now? When he went to Maui and he was not welcomed. And then the sycophant, and a sicko, was fawning up to him. And then he repeated the number 666, and he started to summon the spirits. If you don't see what's going on here, I want you to watch those videos again. My intent is not to put you in the spin cycle. It is to actually analyze the signs and the symbols and the information that they are getting out there so that we can be prepared for what might be coming next. I want you to expose this with me. So I'm so grateful for you sharing this, commenting, and so forth. All right. Give me a couple of minutes to queue up my footage. We're going to be talking about the FBI and the DNA and why that does not add up. Thank you, everybody, for being on board. I can see the chat flying by. Really appreciate you taking a moment to hit that like. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. I'm heavily shadow banned here, and that's because I speak the truth that this platform finds too hot to handle. All right, I'll be right back with you in a couple of minutes. Be sure you're on my free newsletter and also the Substack. That's where I also do deep dives. It's absolutely free. Look in the description box below. And I also have a Maui Fire playlist that you can study and share. Thanks, and see you soon.